Welcome to Spirit's Journey, coming to you live on Truth Frequency Radio and simulcast on Oneness Talk Radio. Your hosts are Patrick and Kathryn Andries.
Join us each week as we explore a wide range of metaphysical topics such as dreams, astrology, intuitive readings, and life purpose. You'll receive practical guidance so that you can live your most awesome life.
Learn more about what we do at intuitiveschool.com and connect with us on Facebook at Spirit's Journey Radio. Welcome to Spirit's Journey. We are coming to you on Truth Frequency Radio, simulcast on Oneness Talk Radio, among others. For instance, you can find us on iHeartRadio, TuneIn, and TalkStream Live. We're here in the Heartland holding the energy for spiritual truth and awareness. I'm Patrick.
And I'm Kathryn. Welcome, everyone. So if you've been outside in the past couple days, you can tell that temperatures are changing. We are heading into fall. I'm actually very glad about that. And we have one of our favorite guests to talk to us today about the change of seasons. If you have not heard Teresa Padilla before, I'm going to give you a little background. She has an extensive studies in metaphysics, probably over 20 years worth of metaphysical deep intense studying and self-development work. From then she moved into studying the different foods and Chinese therapies and understanding how the 5 elements, the seasons, and the foods all work together to make us healthy. So welcome, Teresa.
Wonderful to be here. Yay.
Well, yes, we always need your guidance because some kids are going back to school. Temperatures are changing. I was just at the store today and noticed all these pumpkins. I was like, oh, great. Now it's squash season, my favorite. So maybe you could start off by saying, what is the importance of the change of seasons?
Oh my gosh. I was thinking I could just focus on just the change of seasons in and of itself because there's so much there. And we have so many transitions that we're going through right now, let alone in, of course, our environment on an everyday basis, and then the change in seasons as well. So this very much affects us. And when you start studying in the over 3,000-year-old, system of studying the seasons that go in accordance with nature, then you have such a superpower with you that you can harmonize with, that your body that just naturally flows, and there's such an ease that is created. So right now we are in a transitional phase of the earth element in between late summer, summer and fall, where now that you wake up in the morning here in the northern part of the continents and North America and stuff like that, we have dew that comes up in the morning in some form, coming from the earth, getting ready to close its pores, in wintertime. So you have that excess water coming out of there. And then you've got the mist that's coming, down from the heavens. And those two meet, and it creates a damp environment with the latter part of heat, that's coming out. So there's a lot of dampness issues in the body right now that people react to.
And so actually I've heard the term dampness just because I've been around you and you've taught me a little about that. But for a lot of people, that's a completely new term because it's not really used in Western medicine. So What does it mean if you're damp and what do you do about it? Because it's not ideal.
Well, you have a constitution, which is kind of like your base health modality that you are working with. And this is influenced by your genetics. It's influenced by the environment that you live in. It's influenced by the people that you live with. And it's influenced by the choices of what you take in, with your foods as well. So all of that forms an energy, a spectrum of energy, a frequency that you work with. And so I would suggest going to an acupuncturist or traditional Chinese medicine doctor, herbologist or something like that so they can diagnose what you lean towards. Well, right now, people, if you have allergies, if you have any kind of reactions to like skin rashes, if you have joint issues right now, like your back might hurt, you have headaches, you have swelling or bloating, You have a heaviness in your body, you're tired. Those are all dampness issues in the body.
That was going to be my question: is what might be some symptoms?
Eyes watering, nose running. Those are obvious dampness issues. So there are different foods that you can eat, just like there are different exercises that you can do, if yoga or things like that, to help things move. Well, you can help things move with the foods that you eat as well. And the earth element is key right now because the spleen and the stomach are what rules that earth element. And anytime we're in a transition from one season to the next, we are in what's called the fifth element, and that is earth, always earth. So all that energy when we're moving from one phase to the next, and anything that we do, whether it's like moving for a job, or it's traveling, whether it's going to sleep at night, waking up in the morning, going from one season to the next, what you are ruled by is the earth at those times, and the energy returns to the earth or to your core, and then gets pushed out, comes out, with whatever phase, whatever season that we're in. So to help you harmonize with that, a lot of root vegetables, really good for you. That's why we have squashes, those winter squashes, excellent. Those are neutral foods, and in terms of your constitution, you want to build, if you want something that supports all of your constitution, neutral foods will always do that. They'll supplement whatever you need whenever you need it. So that's a really good place to start, is with earth element foods, root vegetables, oranges, lemons, grapes, apples. Of course, we're getting into the season of, lots of apples.
What about daikon radish?
Daikon radish is cooling.
Oh, I thought it was neutral. Okay.
But, we're going to get into the season of more dry, and that will help when we get into the dryness, the daikon radish.
So what about things like beets?
Beets are great. They're a root vegetable too, neutral. If you want to lose weight or you want to manage your weight, if you want to, you just feel imbalanced in whatever reason, then go to these neutral foods. You do those for 2 weeks and just see how you're resetting yourself is what you're doing. You're just helping your whole system reset itself. Do some great, I have this great recipe that has Azuki beans are great. I just made you guys some Azuki bean chili with butternut squash, Azuki beans. These are neutral, and Azuki beans are kind of like a superfood because what they do is they expel any excess dampness that you might have in your body. They get rid of it. And they also help to tonify your spleen and stomach, which most people, especially women, tend towards the anemia side because they don't have enough, they don't have their core blood and stuff like that nourished enough. Then Azuki beans help with that as well.
Now that's interesting because I love Azuki beans, but honestly, I never ate them until I met you, and you introduced them to me. So why is it that, do they grow somewhere where it's just they're not plentiful in the United States? Because so many people don't eat them. We eat the pinto beans, the black beans, the red beans, but that's one that
they're
we
more
don't...
from Asian countries, yeah.
Okay.
But we do have them here in almost any health food and grocery store. They have Azuki beans, and they have, products that are made with Azuki beans now. It's very plentiful, yeah.
And I remember at the Asian market, they had wasn't it like bean cakes?
Yeah, I love those.
Yeah, Azuki bean cakes, was it?
Yeah,
yes.
They call it red bean.
Red bean
There's
cakes.
a red bean and Azuki bean, but they'll substitute Azuki beans in there. Yeah, they're good.
Oh, yeah, I want to try to find a recipe for that. And Teresa does offer recipes, by the way. Now that we're on that subject, where can people find out more about you and what you offer?
Yeah, 5 Element Foodies Facebook page is a group where I do have a seasonal tips for for the season, and there's recipes and different things on there, and I just put one out, it's like a little newsletter kind of like, but it's on the Facebook page. And you just join as a membership. It's free there. And then spiritual renewal retreats is another Facebook page that you can go to as well.
So with the equinox coming up, can you explain a little bit about the difference between the Chinese calendar and the Western calendar that we're used to? Because I know there's some differences. You know, we usually look at the transition of fall as when the equinox comes in, then fall begins. But I know that the five element way of looking at it is a little bit different.
Well, because there is a fifth element, that would be the difference.
Okay.
And what the difference is 18 days at the end of a season. Between seasons will always be the earth element, and that's with every season. So that constitutes that fifth season. So that's your fifth element. That's the difference.
All right. So that's the 18 days prior to each seasonal transition.
Mm-hmm. And so right now we're in that period, and we'll be going into the autumn equinox on the 22nd of September.
So I wonder if you've ever done any correlation with the zodiac signs, like the Earth zodiac signs, if they do better just generally in certain seasons like Earth time than others versus water signs, air signs.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. I'm starting to study human design, which I absolutely adore because it does takes your birth time when you were born with the I Ching, the seasonal system, and it works both of those together. And then you can find your environment that you're supposed to be in that's right for your constitution, so to speak, and the brain, what nourishes your brain and digestion system, brain cognition, which, you know, we're moving to in health, more learning about brain cognition and how this helps our health. So it's real. I highly recommend learning about that too, and that will help you understand your astrology and make those connections with foods and stuff like that.
Sure. Wow. So during this Earth phase that we're in, Teresa, this little transition, why do so many people get ill?
Well, for one, you're not balanced, and for two, the foods that we eat, we take in so many different, we do that a lot. We eat a lot of foods during the day as far as a frequency of an activity that's consistent and continuous eating is one thing that we all have in common. So paying attention to what foods go in your mouth, what drinks, what time of day you're taking those in. The morning is springtime. And so that is when, they say eat like a king and queen during the morning hours. Well, the reason why that is because the spleen and the stomach, most of your organ systems that can really digest and take in the nutrients are at their optimal frequency in the morning. So if you're eating your biggest meal in the evening, when your body's shutting down, then you can't really take in the nutrients from that. You can't really utilize those foods. And so what they do is they sit there, like a swamp and build up. And that's what a lot of people do. They skip breakfast, they eat a moderate meal, and then they'll eat a big heavy meal, after sunset even. And then it just sits there. And it's very difficult to lose weight and to have a balanced energy field when you do that.
So what would you say to people who maybe say that they don't really feel like eating anything heavy in the morning? So when they get up, they kind of like to let their body sort of get up and going before they eat something heavy. So a lot of times people just eat cereal or maybe toast or things like that.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to eat anything heavy. First thing I would look at is I would ask them to probably go to a traditional Chinese doctor or an acupuncturist, because I would be willing to bet that their spleen and their stomach are out of balance. Because if you're not hungry in the morning, it means that your spleen and stomach are compromised usually, because that's the time that you should be hungry, is in the morning.
Well, that's fascinating. Yeah.
And if you're not, it means that you probably have excess, or it's starting to shut down your spleen or stomach. Yeah.
That is super good to know, because I know I'm like hungry in the morning, and I always found it so weird. I'm like, how could you not be hungry in the morning? You've gone like probably at least 10 hours without food, and how can you feel good not eating? I've never understood that for those kinds of people. So I guess my stomach and spleen are doing okay, because I always have an appetite. And when I fast, a lot of people are doing now, and I'll get your opinion on this, a fast where they won't eat anything after 6 p.m. until the next day at lunch. But I say, well, my fasting, I prefer to eat breakfast, lunch, and then nothing else until the next morning, and then have a big breakfast, which would go along with what you were saying, but people are doing it the other way.
Yeah. Well, there's a reason why they're doing that. It might be spiritual or religious, or, I think the best time, you have to kind of go with yourself. There is a good time, and it, if you're spiritually, you feel like you need to fast or cleanse to reset yourself, then I would probably listen to that if you're attuned with yourself in that way, or if you're working with somebody. But the best time generally to do fasting is when your liver and gallbladder, because that's where all the cleansing is taking place, is through those organ systems, are in their highest functioning, and that would be in spring. So that's the best time to usually do cleanses or fasting at those times. Mm-hmm.
So what is the main focus that you need to work on, like rejuvenating or recharging in the fall season?
The main thing is restoring your yin, and getting the heat and the dampness taken care of if there is excess in your body. That would be the main thing that you want to work with in the fall before you go into winter, because winter, your body shuts down, more, and it's starting now to preserve, to build up. And really, we're like bears hibernating. It's a way that we hibernate. We're storing things. We're storing energy to get ready for spring, because there is a big energy for spring to even come about. It draws forth a lot from us, and if we don't have that stuff stored, that energy stored in us, then we're functioning as a deficiency when spring comes. So autumn is a time where we're getting rid of excess things that we don't need. So you'll see like a theme right now is kind of letting go, and that's what's kind of a theme with fall and autumn. And so the leaves are coming off the trees, things that we don't need, let go of that. Things that we truly cherish and need, take those in. Value and really pay attention to the foods that you're eating, and really choose foods that are really nourishing and full of, root vegetables, warm soups. You can add a little bit of more warming meat if you add a little bit more meat now if you eat meat. If you don't, then add some more grains and nuts for sustenance, but cook those things, have them cooked. Really good teas.
So you're not a raw foodist, because a lot of people are into that. What would you say to people that want to go raw?
Live in a tropical environment.
Certain people would like that.
Where it can support the raw foods that you eat, because there's a lot of, you have to break those down. The body has to break those raw foods down, and what breaks food down is energy and the sunshine and movement. So if you're not really active, and you're not in an environment that has a lot of sunshine where it naturally just breaks that down, then you shouldn't be eating a lot of raw vegetables and raw foods, because what happens is your body won't break it down. And then if you're eating a lot of raw vegetables and you're not in a tropical environment, you're not very active, then eventually you're going to become gluten intolerant, because stuff has backed up. And now you can't tolerate any kind of grains, anything with any pesticides. You start having allergies. You start developing a toxicity in your body and starts reacting. So everything's connected. Everything's connected. And your inner and outer environments are one. You cannot treat them as separate. They are together. That's one thing, is to think more holistically. Don't think so separate. Yeah.
That's fascinating about that, because I have friends from Cuba, and so they, eat very different. Even though they've moved here to Kansas City, they still eat as if they were in Cuba. And I think that is a problem with a lot of people. You know, they want to stick to their dishes from their home country, even though they're in a completely different atmosphere. You know, same thing with the Mexican culture. You know, they've come from a lot of warm Cancun, beach places in Mexico, and then they moved to northern places in the United States, and they really need to change their diet, but they don't.
Yeah.
And so, they gain weight, they start having health issues, which if they had stayed in Mexico, maybe that wouldn't have happened.
Right.
So you talked about the meats earlier. What kind of meats would be good for fall, and also what kind of meats are neutral?
Oh, a great soup is beef and pumpkin stew. That's a great fall soup. That's beef and pumpkin are kind of like a marriage together in fall, specifically. They really help build the stomach and spleen. They help support it. They help support the yin functions that you need going into winter. They help stabilize and ground and anchor you, which you want to be centered and stuff like that. And they're very good, and we've got lots of pumpkin right now. Pork and sauerkraut, pork and cabbage, are very good together as well. Fish, good fish, good white fish is real good, and a little bit of red fish you can handle. Not a lot of red fish, but yeah. Put ginger, cook them with ginger though, so that you clean the fish.
So red being like salmon?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The beef and pumpkin soup sounds absolutely delicious.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds really good. Just imagining it's cold outside and you're having your little stew. That just sounds so great. And so what does it mean when, and I used to be like this, but I'm not anymore, when people don't want to let go of a season. They're like, oh, I don't want summer to end, or, I used to be like that, but now, like, I look forward to the change of season. Is there a correlation with body and, stuff going on that unconscious, why they want to hold on to a season?
Yeah, I would say, there could be a lot of reasons. So one reason could be that maybe they don't like to change. And so when change comes, they might be those individuals that have a lot of reactions because their core is not strong enough. So maybe they have difficulty because their core and their earth element isn't strong enough. So when any kind of change comes like that, then they're not going to look forward to it. The best thing is to nurture yourself, really, embrace the wonder, we have really a plethora of food. We do, I was thinking like people were concerned with a pandemic, we're going to run out of food. I was like, no, we actually have lots of places throughout the world that have backup stock of seeds and all different kinds of things. We are in a whole different place than we used to be. We actually have a lot of food, and food outside that we haven't even tapped, a lot of resources available still. But we like certain things. That would be the culprit for a lot of people, that I would say. You like certain things. Now, that doesn't mean that that's going to necessarily harmonize with the season or harmonize with your constitution if you like certain things. And, a rainbow of foods, if you're getting all the different colors, the different smells, scents, the different tastes, more than likely you're going to be getting a balance in each meal. So if you don't know all the neutral foods, if you don't know exactly what your constitution needs, look to get healthy, organic as much as you can, local foods that have that go with that season, that have different taste, flavors, smell, and color.
And
Yeah.
if people don't know what their local foods are, just go to your farmer's market,
Right.
whatever they have there. Maybe oddly enough, some of them will have something that's not local, but the majority is going to be the local food, and it's awesome. And when we go into the second half, I do want to talk about this idea of eating locally, what's going on with the soil, because it is impacting our nutrition. And there is a wonderful movie I'll talk a little about in the second half called Need to Grow. It's a documentary about some amazing things that you were just saying, Teresa, that it is bountiful and plentiful, the food. And in this documentary, it's very interesting because the consensus was it's actually easy to grow food. You don't need pesticides and herbicides and all that if you do it correctly. And the problem has been the monolithic monocropping and the regular fertilizer that we've been putting on the ground, they said, is causing the erosion. And organic soil, for example, holds 20% more moisture than regular soil. So there's so many advantages to buying organic because you are supporting the farmers that are doing the organic. It holds more water in the soil. We'll talk about more of that at the break.
All right, so we are going to be going into a short break, and you are listening to Spirit's Journey on Truth Frequency Radio and Oneness Talk Radio. We will see you on the other side. We are back from the break. If you are just joining us, this is Spirit's Journey with Patrick and Kathryn Andries. We are coming to you on Truth Frequency Radio and Oneness Talk Radio, among others. We're here today with Teresa Padilla talking about seasonal foods as we head into the fall season.
And we briefly touched on this idea of eating local. Teresa said it's very important to do. And of course, farmers markets are good because they show you what your local foods are if you don't know. Probably not going to be something like a pineapple if you live in the Midwest. But so this documentary, I encourage everyone to see, called Need to Grow, talks about the importance of eating organic because the soil. And one interesting fact they said is that if we keep going on the current trajectory that we're on, we only have about 65 more years worth of soil that is farmable. So that we do need to start moving towards, away from the monocropping, away from all the, regular fertilizer, which they say is not good for the lawn or, the gardens. So, Teresa, what is the big deal about eating organic, and what happens if we don't? And also the idea with local. What happens when I eat foods from Thailand, but I live in, Kansas City? How does that affect my body?
Well, there's a lot of different things going on with that. Like, one, you've chosen to live in an environment. Now, there is an environment that supports your base genetic code that's better, that's uniquely yours, that is worth it to find out. If you want to know that, give me a call. Or, contact me on 5 Element Foodies or Spiritual Renewal Retreats, Facebook. And we can find that out for you. But it's very important, even if you don't know that, is that you harmonize with the environment that you choose to live in. So one way that you can do that is by eating local foods. Because you are made of matter, of energy, now we find out, and now science is finding out that you're not only made of matter and energy, but you're made of the space in between that, which is connected to a frequency or a spectrum that forms a holograph with the world that you live in, or your own little universe, so to speak. So the more that you harmonize with the fact that you're connected with a whole city, a whole area, whole people, whole food, then the more that you're going to be able to have an ease of flow within yourself and with your relationships. So it is definitely important to work with. Now, how, nitty and gritty are you going to get according to organic and according to... I don't agree with getting fanatical with anything. I just don't. Because it throws your whole system off when you get fanatical. It's too much yang energy. So I agree doing things with balance and with mediocrity, middle way. I agree with that. And learning how to really right time for things, the right season and the right time for you. You can do all things in the right time, right? When your little, 4-year-old grandson or kid asks, I want this, I want that, I want that, you don't give him everything, right? I would hope so, because you know what's going to happen if you do, right? It's not going to be in harmony with the rest of the world or them. So you want to do the same thing to yourself. I mean, don't be a little 4-year-old kid that wants everything right now.
So one thing that I found on my spiritual journey is that as I began to connect with myself, that I really began to connect with nature more. And I know you have a very deep spiritual metaphysical background. So could you give some suggestions as far as how people could do things other than only diet to really connect with their inner self and then to be able to experience that connection as a real tangible experience that you're describing?
Yeah, I mean, I think yoga, qigong, tai chi are all exercises that help you to connect with yourself and also harmonize with your environment. So learning those can be very beneficial. A lot of shamanic traditions have practices that are very connecting to your inner self and the environment that help you achieve that balance. Meditation, if you're actually practicing a type of meditation, that's very helpful. Just going outside and reaching your feet into the ground and kind of, connecting with Mother Earth at the core, then reaching your hands to the heavens and connecting your base, your middle, and your upper, just practicing having attention and having that kind of centeredness throughout the day and taking some deep breaths in and out with that. That helps you as well. Breathing exercises, excellent to do right now because breathing is when fall or autumn is associated with the lungs and large intestine. And then we were talking about the first half, a lot about the fifth element, the earth element being highlighted right now as transition into autumn. And that's associated with the stomach and spleen. One thing that I realize in my study now, which I've studied, I guess the seasonal foods, 10 years? Has it been 10 years or more now at least? And when I say study, when I study things, I apply them in every area of my life. That's what I mean by study. I go in there when I decide to do something. So I've lived them, and what I'm noticing now is that the small intestine, which is part of your intestinal systems, but it also is associated in traditional Chinese medicine with the heart system. However, because we have a tiny small intestine, and a lot of people have problems with movement and with their digestive system based on what's going through their small intestine. So what I've learned is just there's rudimentary things that are kind of like learning how to ride a bike when you're working with your digestive system. And one of them is eating like a king or queen. Eating like a king or queen for breakfast, eating like a prince and princess for midday, and then eating like a pauper at the end of the day. Those help with your digestion. The other thing is not drinking, taking in liquids while you're eating, because that destroys the natural enzymes that you have to break down the foods. Not taking in cold like iced liquids or smoothies. Anything real cold is going to shut down the stomach and spleen and therefore shut down your digestion, make it harder to digest. It'll have to get warmed up again before the digestion will occur. Let's see, chewing, making sure that you are chewing the food, and that then instigates the saliva glands to start to function and to start to break down the foods, because it starts immediately with the smell, the taste, the different senses. All are a part of the digestion. So cooking your own food, anything that you can engage, get all of those senses engaged in the act of eating, then that's going to help with your digestion more.
Well, yeah, anything else about the digestion? Because I think it's key.
Well, what I'm figuring out is that the small intestine, a lot of people have issues with that small intestine, especially right now going in the transitional phases. Because it's so small, it is a part of digestion. But if you're not doing these rudimentary things, that's one reason why you would have issues with that small intestine. Now, what flares up when it's small intestine issues? Acid reflux, all those, eyes, burning eyes, sneezing, gas problems, all those things will be in play. So doing the things that I suggested will help you to calm those. Also, overwhelming emotions while you're eating. If you can't process or digest your emotions, then it's difficult to digest your food as well. And the small intestine is connected with the heart, which is connected with your emotions.
So the saying, don't go to bed angry, don't go to the table angry.
Yeah, and we are in a time in our planetary evolution with our consciousness. It's time to become aware of your emotions. It is time to learn your impact on others with your emotions and on your body and with yourself, and to have hedons with that. Take care of it, nourish, nurture, learn how to adapt, learn how to have a still mind, learn how to have a still body. Now, some people do function better when they're eating alone. Some people will function better when they're able to be in kind of a market area when they're eating. I've learned this through the primary health system with human design, that we have a different body design and a different brain cognition, which the brain cognition is how we digest our neurons, our brain waves, and how therefore connects with our digestion system as well. So that's important to find out as well.
One of the things when you were talking about the small intestine that I've observed is that, especially in the United States, we eat such large portions. I think we eat really big portions compared to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
And when you look at the actual size of the small intestine, it's really very small tubes.
Yeah.
And we have something like 36 feet of small intestines for your food to go through. And since part of my background's in biology, one of the things we're looking at is that really our digestive system is more suited to eating plant matter than a lot of meat. That we are omnivores, and so we actually adapted to be able to eat meat when that was all that was available. But with that 36 feet of small intestines, we don't want to really stuff ourselves with these huge meals. Or a lot of times when you go to the restaurant, you see this huge portion of meat, and then you might get a baked potato or maybe a little sprig of broccoli or something like that to go with it. So everything's just completely upside down, it seems like.
Yeah, we don't need that much meat anymore. Our bodies don't require it. I mean, when you are functioning from survival mode and you are out there trying to survive, you need more meat. You have to have more meat in your diet. Well, the kind of sedentary lifestyles that we have, watching the computer, watching our phones, stuff like that, we don't require as much meat as we did before. So plant-based diet is much more conducive to the evolution of our frequency right now.
Well, one big wake-up call for me, we have a friend from China, and one time we were just talking about how people eat in her country when she was growing up there, and she said, well, yeah, one of these servings of chicken would basically be what the entire family would eat. They would split it up among everybody in the family. And we were each eating, this big serving of chicken that would have been like a family serving there. So, yeah, I mean, that's a big wake-up call. And then you see movies like Super Size Me. I think a lot of people kind of got off that kick. But I know with restaurants, because I've worked in the restaurant field before, and a lot of times the labor is actually the most expensive part of it. So then they tend to often give people really big portions to make you feel like you're getting your money's worth when you're paying $20 or $25 for a plate.
Right.
And so, it is something, and then people always remark in a good way. They're always like, oh, they get such big portions here, but I think the main thing is to eat maybe half of what they give you and take the other half home, instead of trying to fit it all in.
Yeah, exactly. Or waste it. Yeah.
Well, right. Yeah.
Right.
Well, now another topic which recently has affected me is travel, and we didn't even go far away. But I just get really worn out when I travel, and I know we were talking about, your body synchronized to certain areas. So for people that are going to be traveling over the holidays or even now, what are some things we can do to help our bodies get over, whether it's jet lag or just tiredness, from traveling?
Well, there's a little travel pack remedies that I would recommend. For one, if you can go to like an Asian market and get some red dates, they're dehydrated red dates. They're also called jujubes, and they're a Chinese name. And those are actually, in Asian countries, they grow like a small sweet apple. Really good. We can grow the trees here in the North America as well, in certain climates. But when you dry those, they look like a red date. And those are really good for traveling, for your digestion. They help to build all the organ systems that are associated, that are affected with traveling, and help to kind of reset and reboot and reset yourself. And to make tea out of those or eat them in like a oatmeal or something in the morning. Oatmeal actually, and I'm not talking like the flakes, I'm talking actual oats, still cut oats, grains that are whole grains. When you make a cereal out of those and cook it, and then add jujubes, add some, right now, like papaya is really good right now too, and the enzymes really help to digest things. You could do little pear, apples, throw in some kind of berries, figs are excellent right now as well, raisins. All those, a little bit of some kind of sweetener, whether it's raw honey or maple syrup or turbinado sugar or cane sugar, and having that it's a very sustainable breakfast that really does help you when you travel. And there's a lot of it's easy to make too, and you can get the packets. They're not as nourishing as the whole grains, but they have those all over, and those are really good to have. Eat an apple, all different kinds of apples right now, really good. Squash, really good. Squash and rice, stir fry, something like that with some root vegetables.
And if there is not a dietary component, if you're eating well when you're traveling, is there another, mental component or with the environment that tends to throw certain people off more than others when they travel?
I think, your environment influences you greatly. And if you have not had the proper amount of rest If you've been going too much, then when you travel, you're now functioning at a deficit, and you can only do so much, you know. And that's when it'll really affect you, is when you're traveling. So you find out how nurturing you are to yourself when you travel. And if you can sustain your energy when you're traveling, then you're probably taking care of your whole self. But if you can't, then there's some adjustment, either spiritual, mental, emotional, or physical, as far as nurturing yourself that needs to take place.
Now, is there any kind of an element to this about where you live? Because, you know, we've kind of talked about some of the local foods and things like that, but now that we're talking about traveling, so I would imagine that after a time that your body would get acclimated. For example, I grew up in the Oklahoma area around Tulsa, and then I moved to Chicago. So for a while, my body was adjusting, and at first, I was just freezing in the winters there because I wasn't used to it being that cold. But then after a couple of years, I noticed that my body would adjust, and I found out later that actually your blood thickens, which helps you retain your heat. So I'm just curious about how our body adapts to different areas, and if maybe that's part of the fatigue that we feel sometimes when we're traveling, is just that our body is like being displaced from where it's usually accustomed to living.
Yeah, you're more vulnerable when you're traveling, and on all levels. And yeah, if you have to nurture yourself so that you have that adaptability. I wrote on 5 Element Foodies. It wasn't this last season, but the season before in summer. I had put out a tip, which you can go back and look on there, for adaptogens. And there's a lot of foods and herbs that are really good adaptogens. Like right now, every season I change my herbs that I utilize, and that's my form of medicine, so to speak. So right now I'm taking, I'll usually always do some kind of, like right now, green tea, mother chrysanthemum is so good for you. You can find dried and I'm not talking the chrysanthemum that you get out flowers like mums. I'm talking mother chrysanthemum that's grown mainly in China or Asian countries, but they dry those flowers, and they're really good if you have any kind of allergies or if you're traveling, making some tea with them. And I have found nothing better, to be honest. And mother chrysanthemum also is something that helps with any kind of environmental influences that you have too much of. If there's too much pesticides, if there's too much of, mold or anything, it just helps cleanse it and helps your lungs, helps support the lungs. But I make a tea with green tea, mother chrysanthemum, red dates, and raw honey. And I'm still drinking that right now. Let's see, astragalus is another herb right now that is an adaptogen that's really good to do this time of year and into fall. It is warming, and I like to take anything that's, a lot of herbs do better when you have a little bit of raw honey with them, a teaspoon of raw honey. So whether you get like Nature's Way is a good company that I like to use for supplements, and I call them, they're more herbal, they're whole foods, whole medicine, and they they have astragalus, and it's just in the capsules, and then I just make sure that I have a little bit of raw honey with that, because it's very drying. A lot of those herbs are very drying, and when you have a little raw honey, it helps them be activated and just work better.
When you were talking about trouble with pesticides, one thing that we were shocked about recently is that our daughter Jewel went to a doctor recently, and he did some testing with her and found that she actually tested very high for glyphosates, which we are very careful with what we eat. We get as much organic food as we can, and when it's not organic, we wash it thoroughly to get any pesticides off. And I don't know, maybe she's getting it from eating out at restaurants, because you never know exactly how the food's been prepared there. So are there some other things that people can do? Because I imagine that especially with the glyphosates, that's an emerging problem that people are just really kind of waking up to how big of a problem this is. Are there any other suggestions maybe for cleansing out the pesticides?
Oh, mother chrysanthemum is one of the best, actually. They use it with radiation poison.
Oh, wow,
on a bench.
radiation poison.
It's very good. Also seaweed. Roasted seaweed, cooking with seaweed. Seaweed just neutralizes and cleanses any kind of toxin that is in your environment or body. Yeah.
Trader Joe's has a couple of really good seaweed snacks that I like.
Yeah, really?
Yeah, it's dried and roasted, and I think that's how they eat it a lot in China. One of our friends would get these little seaweed snacks from China, but she would get them from the Chinese market, and then I saw them in Trader Joe's, and I'm like, these are great. So.
Yeah, with tamari. They have tamari on them a lot, yeah.
Yeah, and I think I get one, too, that's wasabi. It's
yeah,
a little bit,
you like the
hotter.
heat?
Yeah, a little bit hotter. Either one.
Well,
I like the
seaweed's
roasted
cold. Seaweed is very cold as far as the physics of it, the temperature of that food. And so it's good to pair it with a little, especially when it's a colder environment, colder time now here in North America continent. We're going into fall and it's a little bit cooler. So you want to, if you're eating something cold like that, you want to have something warm with it so it doesn't harm the lungs, because the lungs take in and breathe. We're breathing in, breathing out. Those are what highlighted, lungs and large intestine right now in fall. And so the lungs do not do well with too much liquid or too much dryness or too much heat or too cold. Any kind of extremes the lungs don't do very good with.
So that's obviously great advice for people who are afraid of the COVID virus and what's going on with that. We obviously all need to support the lungs, whether that exists or not. And so the chrysanthemum, if I remember, they're actually just the flower tops that you buy in a bag, right?
Yeah, just the flowers.
Yeah, it actually looks like a flower. So you're not going to find that in the regular store. You've got to find some kind of Chinese market that has them. And now I remember also ginger is something that you take at different times. So in the fall, what kind of ginger should people be taking?
I mean, you can do dried ginger, candied ginger, but do a little bit because it is warming. So you don't want to eat the whole pack of candied ginger, at one time. Mm-hmm. Pair it with like the seaweed, sushi, soups, teas, add it a little bit. Ginger ales, those are good. Kombucha, is good in the fall as well. It's a little warming and that is cleansing as well. They also have like a probiotic element to them as fermentation, so it helps to break down things. Builds the gut up, the biotics or the bacteria in the gut. Elderberry. Elderberry is excellent. Of course, a lot of people have elderberry right now.
Yes, yeah. And actually, for those people in the Kansas City area, I just learned of a farm. It's in Paola. And one of their specialties, a Whispering Elm Farm. And one of their specialties is, they make all kinds of products from elderberry syrups, salves, all kinds of cool things. So check them out. Thank you, Teresa. Again, 5 Element Foodies. You can find her on Facebook.
Thank you.
All right. So thanks for being with us. You can connect with us on Facebook at Spirits Journey Radio. Be sure to like our page. You can study with us or get a reading at intuitiveschool.com. This has been Spirits Journey Live on Truth Frequency Radio, simulcast on Oneness Talk Radio. I'm Patrick.
I'm Kathryn. Have a great week. We will catch you next Saturday.
See you on the other side.